Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's founding father and Africa's first post-colonial president south of the Sahara, understood the precariousness of his position. His vision of a United States of Africa, a federal state with a common market, currency, unified army, and foreign policy, was seen as a direct threat by Western powers. Nkrumah believed that only through unity could Africa truly progress, solve internal conflicts, and defend itself against external aggression. Ghana's independence from British colonial rule in 1957 was not just a milestone for Ghana, but for the entire continent. Nkrumah's declaration that Ghana's independence was meaningless unless linked to the total liberation of the continent resonated deeply across Africa. He actively supported African liberation movements, providing training, funding, and encouragement to resist colonial rule. Within a decade of Ghana's independence, over 35 African nations had also achieved independence, a testament to Nkrumah's influence. However, his efforts to unite Africa and his anti-imperialist stance made him a target for Western powers, particularly the United States. In his book Dark Days in Ghana, Nkrumah alleged that the CIA and other intelligence agencies were actively working to undermine his government through bribery and recruitment of traitors within his administration. While these claims were initially dismissed as paranoia, declassified documents later revealed that the CIA had indeed orchestrated a plot to remove Nkrumah, who, according to these files, had done more to undermine American interests than any other black African leader. The US government, determined to prevent Nkrumah from uniting Africa, collaborated with senior Ghanaian military and police officers, supported by British and American diplomats and intelligence officers. These external actors provided long-term planning, financing, and logistical support for Nkrumah's ouster. Discussions of regime change in Ghana between the UK and the US began as early as 1961, 5 years before the actual coup. Details of these early plans remain largely unknown due to continued censorship of declassified documents from this period. The US State Department at the time described Nkrumah's overpowering desire to export his brand of nationalism as making Ghana one of the foremost practitioners of subversion in Africa. Nkrumah's resistance to IMF and World Bank economic policies, his support for nationalist movements across Africa, in countries like Ivory Coast, Upper Volta, Niger, Togo, Senegal, Cameroon, Liberia, and Nigeria, and his support for the African National Congress in South Africa further fueled Western opposition. In the years leading up to the coup, Washington withheld loans to Ghana and manipulated world cocoa prices to deprive Nkrumah of foreign exchange. US Ambassador Franklin Williams, one of the first African Americans to hold such a position, presented his credentials to Nkrumah just weeks before the coup. However, private correspondences revealed that Williams boasted about soon running the country, raising serious questions about his association with US intelligence and his role in the coup. This was particularly disturbing given Nkrumah's Pan-Africanism and his call for Ghana to be a haven for black artists, thinkers, and leaders. Just 3 weeks before the coup, Nkrumah's newspaper, The Spark, questioned why the US would send an African-American ambassador to Ghana while not supporting racial equity at home, speculating that Nkrumah perceived this as a sign of disrespect. On February 21, 1966, 3 days before the coup, Nkrumah embarked on a state visit to Vietnam to mediate in the US war. The US encouraged this diplomatic mission and even promised to halt bombing in North Vietnam to ensure his safety. Meanwhile, back in Ghana, 600 soldiers were mobilized and sent south to Accra. They were initially told they were being deployed to southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, then told they were going to fight in Vietnam, and finally, upon reaching the capital, were told they would fight in southern Rhodesia against Ian Smith's white minority government. The coup plotters justified their actions by accusing Nkrumah's administration of abuse and corruption, citing his involvement in African politics and his belief in deploying Ghanaian troops across Africa for liberation wars. They also pointed to the absence of democratic practices in Ghana, which they claimed affected the morale of the armed forces. At dawn on February 24, 1966, the coup was launched. Key government installations, including the State Broadcasting House and International Communication buildings, were quickly seized. Heavy fighting occurred at Flagstaff House, the presidential residence, but when Colonel Ike Kotoka threatened to bomb the residence, Nkrumah's wife, Fatia Nkrumah, advised the guards to surrender. The coup leaders announced the regime change over the radio, dissolving parliament, dismissing ministers, and disbanding Nkrumah's Convention People's Party. A CIA telegram informed Washington of the coup, stating that the coup leaders appeared to be implementing previously agreed upon plans. While reports varied, the coup was far from bloodless, with estimates of casualties ranging significantly. Nkrumah went into exile in Guinea, where President Sékou Touré, a close ally, made him an honorary co-president. Former CIA whistleblower John Stockwell later revealed the CIA's involvement in Nkrumah's downfall, stating that Howard Bain, the CIA station chief in Accra, engineered the overthrow. Stockwell claimed that Bain received a double promotion and an intelligence star for the operation, which was conducted without any documentation linking the CIA hierarchy to the coup. While Nkrumah's policies were seen as socialist and aligned with communist interests, his government did not take direct orders from the Soviet Union or China. He often criticized the Soviet Union for not adequately supporting African liberation movements. The purported justification for the coup, a lack of democracy, masked the true motives. Conditions in Ghana did not improve after Nkrumah's overthrow. Instead, the country experienced a series of military juntas and economic decline. The IMF imposed harsh conditions, dismantling Nkrumah's industrialization program. The US, which had long criticized Nkrumah's economic management, tolerated even more political prisoners under the military junta that followed. The National Liberation Council, which took power, pursued privatization, restoring foreign dominance over Ghana's economy. Ultimately, the coup was orchestrated because Nkrumah was perceived as a threat to Western economic interest. His Pan-Africanist vision, his nationalization policies, and his anti-imperialist stance clashed with Western interests. The US, with significant investments in projects like the Volta Dam, feared the potential loss of their investments and international credibility. Nkrumah's policies were interpreted through the lens of the Cold War, with his non-aligned stance seen as anti-Western. His support for anti-imperialist causes and his role in the non-aligned movement were viewed as destabilizing by Western powers. US foreign policy in Africa was largely driven by fear of Soviet and Chinese influence. Africans were often seen as pawns in this global struggle. US officials even discussed using psychological warfare to isolate Nkrumah and turn public opinion against him. The fact that mid-level US and British agents felt entitled to decide the fate of an African regime highlights the disregard for the sovereignty and self-determination of African nations. Nkrumah firmly believed that political independence was meaningless without economic independence. By the time of the coup, Ghana had 68 state-owned factories producing a wide range of goods. Nkrumah's industrialization plan was on track until the coup derailed it, representing a major setback for both Ghana and the entire continent. Had Nkrumah been allowed to complete his plan, Ghana could have become a major economic powerhouse. The coup not only halted Ghana's progress but also undermined the broader Pan-African movement. The question remains, did conditions in Ghana improve after Nkrumah? The answer is a resounding no. The coup and the subsequent military regimes plunged Ghana into a period of instability and economic hardship, a stark contrast to the vision of progress and prosperity that Nkrumah had championed.